Hello and welcome to Jimbo's Guernsey Bean Jar recipe. Now before we start, the traditional Guernsey Bean Jar was made a long time ago. There are several different versions of it, but basically it was made to be a very cheap meal. So before everybody who does traditional harps on says it's not a traditional bean jar, it's not, because the traditional one with just a pig's trotter in, bacon and a few beans, to me is pretty tasteless. So you take a recipe and you make it your own. Now this is my own. I've never had any complaints. It goes down very well. And if you fancy giving it a try, let me know what you think. Ingredients wise, what have we got? I've got them all here laid out so we can show you. First of all, we got a 50-50 split of dried haricots and butter beans, about 500 grams of each, which is what they come in the packet from the supermarket. Soaked overnight and then rinsed to get rid of all that mucky water and bibs and bibbits. They're all ready to go. Meat wise, we've got some diced pork leg. Now you can use whichever pork you like. You can use belly pork, loin pork, pork chop, pork joint, anything you like. I use whatever's on reduced or whatever's on offer. I'll use it. As long as it's pork, it doesn't matter. People will go use a trotter or whatever. This will give you a decent lot of meat. I like mine meaty. Split with beef as well. So on this occasion I've got shin of beef, lovely bit of shin of beef there with the bone in, so some marrow, so that's going to give a nice lot of flavour. Again, I've used beef steaks before, beef joint before, anything you want as long as it's got some beef in it. I quite often put more meat in it, but for the ratio of beans to meat this is how much I'm using today. My little bit I like, very special in mine, is smoked bacon. It has to be smoked. You can posh it up if you like and use some beach smoked pancetta or whatever. This is just the thin sliced smoked bacon from the supermarket. It's 10 rashers. The reason I'm using the thin one is when I chop it up later, you'll see it gives a nice spread of the meat throughout the dish and the flavour. Our onions going on here, 3 medium brown onions, about a soup bowl full. Roughly chop those. There's some small bits in there, there's some big bits. That's just to get a bit of texture going on with the different sizes and that. The herbs here, I've got some rosemary, as you can see. I've got quite a lot of rosemary because I like the rosemary flavour. I've roughly chopped that up a little bit to get it to spread its flavour around nicely. I've got some dried herb of Provence, about a decent tablespoonful of those. And I've got a decent half tablespoon of cracked black pepper. You might not like rosemary, you might want to leave it out, you might want to replace it with sage or thyme, but I really like the rosemary flavour in there. Finally, I've got a couple of stock cubes, 1 beef, 1 vegetable, and that's going to go in there as well for all the added flavour. Here's our dish we're going to cook it in. No, it's not a traditional bean jar before the traditionalists go off again, but it serves its purpose, cooks very evenly, and can go in the oven for hours and it's not going to hurt in there. One thing you will notice is there are no carrots before the carrots debate comes up. You can put carrots in your bean jar if you like. It's your bean jar. Some recipes of the old Guernsey ones will show carrots on it. The Jersey recipe definitely shows carrots on it. If you like carrots, put them in. My wife doesn't like carrots, so we don't put carrots in. So to assemble, to start off, we've got our pan on the hob. We're going in with a massive knob of butter. Get that heating up, melting pretty quick. Get that spread around. Sizzle and fry. And then we're going to go in with our bacon. Just get that melted off. And heat down a bit. And start layering our bacon in there. We want to cook the bacon, but main reason is it's a lot easier to chop up when you've fried it off. Don't need to be brown, just cooked a little bit. That's going to go in there, 5 rashers at a time, and we'll fry that off. So our bacon's just about where we want it now. It's cooked, but it's not burning, it's just starting to brown. Leave it in long enough that you start to get a bit of the fat, and then take it out and set it aside, leaving as much of the fat behind as possible. And we're going to set that aside over there to cool down, and then we'll deal with that in a bit. Okay, so all the bacon's fried, set aside. got our pan left. The reason we do the bacon first is we end up with all this lovely buttery bacon fat in there, and that's going to be perfect for when you're bunging our onions. Okay, so whack your onions in there. Now we're going to fry those off, medium heat. What we're not doing is we don't want to brown them too much, because the longer you cook onions for, the sweeter they will get. So we're just looking to break them up a bit, make sure they're coated in that lovely bacon fat and butter. Now if you're a bit shy like I am, a little glog of olive oil in there, that will give you enough to get your onions where we want them. And we're just going to keep stirring those off. So we've got our onions now where we want them, a little bit of colour, nothing too much. Most of the oil and butter and that in there has been absorbed and coated into the onions. So what we're going to do now is remove those from the heat, and then we'll go for the assembly. Our bacon's all cooled down now. We don't want all the fat and the rind in there, otherwise we're going to end up with a layer of fat floating on top of the dish. Got enough flavour without using it, so we're going to trim all that off now, and we're going to chop the remaining bacon very finely. So we've now chopped our bacon up pretty small, as you can see, so that it gets a nice distribution throughout the dish. By the time it's finished, it's going to be quite a large dish. We set the bacon rind aside. Don't throw that in your food bin. Either put it out for the birds, or you can use the canine waste disposal unit, which is what I use. And they'll be quite happy with a bit of that each. So we'll sort them out. Make sure you share, otherwise you're going to lose your fingers. My 3 puppies love a bit of bacon rind. Right, on to assembly. So we've got our dish. If that pan's still hot, just put a splash of stock in it to make sure you're not going to burn your first layer of beans or whatever. What I'm trying to do is just layer it up a bit. So I'm going to stick some beans in. Nice little coating of them. Go into a handful of bacon, like that. Smash a few onions in there, like that. Put our meat in the middle. There goes in the pork. Make sure that's spread around nicely. Stick the beef in the centre. Boom. Like that. Layer up a few more beans on top. Finish off the bacon. That's gone in there. And there. Rest of the onions. There and there. Bang the herbs in. Give it a little sprinkle, but it will move around because we're going to stir it a little bit. But get all the herbs in there. They're in. Rest of the beans. Pot's looking full. Perfect. In of our couple of litres of stock. So, well, litre this is. That's not going to be enough. So we're going to top that up with water. Right to the top. So I've had to go with another 1.5 litres, 2 litres of just plain hot water to bring that up to the level I want. Just a bit below the top, but the beans are still going to expand as they cook, so you want to make sure there's enough water in it. I'm going to put the lid on. I'm going to bang that in the oven at 150 for about 3 hours before we look at it. For our own, we can check it earlier, but that's going in the oven now. So we'll smash that in. So that's in there, close it up, forget about it for a couple of hours. So we're just on 3.5 hours cooking now, and what we're going to do now is, you can see it's still quite wet, and that's fine, but what we need to do is we need to get all the meat out. So we're going to lift it out, put it in a separate bowl, find all the bits of pork, and basically sift them all out into there, and then we're going to let them cool. Now is we put the stew back in the oven while we were shredding the meat, and then basically the meat by this time is stewed enough that we can just shred all the meat off the bone, and all the marrows come out of there, the flavour, so that can stay in there. But if you look at the consistency of the bean jar at the moment, it's very, very watery, and this is where all the magic happens. So the trick to do this is we need the potato masher, and we're going to mash it, not touch that. We're going to mash it and stir it as we go until we get the consistency that we want. So if you watch, as you mash and you just keep scraping that back off the bottom, you're basically breaking up a lot of the butter beans and that on the bottom, which will gradually thicken it up. We've still got the meat to go back in here yet. See it change colour as all the creaminess from the beans comes out. We don't want to mash them all, we still want quite a few whole, but the more we mash a few up, the thicker it will get. If it is still too runny when we've done this, all we do is we leave the lid off the casserole dish. So I'm going to put the meat back in, see how that thick, that bone can go back in, there's still some flavour to come out of there. Add our meat back in. Although it's nicely stewed, we've broken it up, making sure when we break it up we pick out all the bits of sinew and fat and all that. We only want the nice meat that's shredded down going back in. So as we stir this up now, nearly there, a little bit more mashing. It will thicken more as well when we put it back in the oven. We haven't finished cooking it. We'll go back in the oven for about another half an hour or so, and then we'll be done. So that's probably a bit wetter than I'd like. So I'm going to leave it in the oven with the lid off for about half an hour, and that will reduce down. And there we have it. Total cooking time approximately 5.5 hours. It's thickened up nicely. You may have picked up earlier on, I didn't at any point put salt in it. I don't put any salt until you serve it because I like mine salty. Some people don't like any salt at all. So serve it with nice French bread, some Guernsey butter and salt to taste, and then you're done. Beautiful. Thanks for watching.